Bring in Wyoming Senator Energy Committee and Foreign Relations Committee member, and by the way, medical doctor John Barrasso. It's good to have you here, sir.
Good to be with you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Senator, first let's talk about what Edward just reported, this vote that Mitch McConnell is bringing. This is after the negotiations he had with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, another $250 billion. That expected to come to an empty floor today. Your expectations that it passes, but then what happens when Nancy Pelosi gets her hands on that legislation? Then what?
You're absolutely right. Look, Americans want to get back to work, and this Paycheck Protection Program is so vital to that. This is $350 billion. The demand has been high, and it's going to get higher even tomorrow when this now opens to independent contractors and to self-employed. So we need more money in that program because you want to keep people tied to their job, connected. You want the small businesses to remain viable so we can get America back working quickly. But once again, Nancy Pelosi is playing politics. She's holding up this relief for small businesses. It's about identity politics. She has quotas in place, the things that she is demanding for this money that's available to all small businesses and all independent contractors, all the self-employed. That's why the demand is so great and why it's so important for our country that this get passed today.
Well, Senator, you joined 15 other senators just yesterday. You signed a letter that calls for flexibility on how state and local governments can use the funds included in the relief fund. I mean, obviously, a huge burden right now is on some major American cities and governors as well. So talk about that decision yesterday in that letter.
Well, you're right. The burden is on the governors, is on the large city mayors. It's also on small communities all around the country. And Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska and me being from Wyoming, we know that the needs are there. We've been visiting with our county commissioners, our mayors. They need the relief as well. People all around the country are impacted by the coronavirus. So we want to make sure our first responders are aided in ways through the state government. The way that the money was decided to go out is the best way they could do it was through the states. But in so many of these small communities, we need to make sure that the governors have the flexibility to use that money there, because often the mayor is the first responder, is the EMT or the paramedics, and we don't want the federal government to later come back and say, oh, no, you shouldn't have given the money to the small communities. The small communities need it just as much as the big cities, right. Cheryl.
And Senator, before you go, just real quick, we're almost out of time, but, you know, the concern is, obviously, when you have stimulus, what most people want to see, especially from an investment perspective, is you want to see it temporary, you want to see it targeted, but the big word here is temporary. Are you concerned, because we do have a House controlled by the Democrats, that some of these programs that are going out to Americans that need it now would end up being permanent?
Well, I want to make sure that doesn't happen. I want to make sure these are temporary and targeted. I think a lot of the debate in this presidential election coming up between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is going to be along that line. When, we see Joe Biden, the nominee, saying he wants to go along the lines of free health care for illegal immigrants and the Green New Deal and a number of the things that he's promoting, ending fracking. I mean, this is going to be, I think, a big part of the discussion in the election of 2020. We need to make sure that this money is targeted to the places where it needs it, and then it goes away and we get government back to the role. But right now we have an emergency, both a medical emergency as well as an economic emergency. We need to get America back to work sooner rather than later.
Yeah, amen. Senator John Barrasso. Senator, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Cheryl.
All right.